Hey guys, so this morning we're picking back up, kind of going to be in the process here of doing a larger scale example project to kind of gauge where my friend is in his programming ability and speed, with the goal of if we do well here and we think that we've kind of conquered the initial concepts, then we'll move on to some of the more advanced stuff. But also just it's good to get a kind of a larger scale example under our belt, because a lot of the initial programming practice that you'll do when you're first learning is kind of going to be these small, like not, what's the right way to put this? Kind of contrived. I don't know. That makes it sound super negative, but like the problems that don't really seem to be doing too much useful to you. So we're going to try to do something that, at least on the surface of it, could actually be something that's used in the real world, something that's more useful, feel like we're building, an actual software product that, at least in the hypothetical, isn't like useless. So it may seem kind of harsh, but it's also just more motivating for us to do something that's more interesting, kind of on a bigger scale as well. So where we're going to pick up today is we're going to try to make as much progress as we can, going through and figuring out how to make this application dealing with our storefront that we talked about. So we decided that we were going to have a collection of stores, and the stores have store owners, and then we also have customers. And then the very first time that we started on this project idea here, we were kind of fleshing out the idea and deciding what we were going to do. Just to go back over what we decided we're going to make a command line application where people can do appropriate things, having logged in on the command line, and then they can do things like buy products or things like that. And so we're going to make a storefront that lets you buy groceries, and we'll probably come up with several different types of stores, maybe a grocery store, maybe like a sports equipment store, something like that. We came up with an outline for the information that we're going to need to store about each thing: ID, name, store owner, items for sale. You know what? Now that I think of it, we probably actually ought to have another thing that we track, which is going to be the items for sale, or trying to think about the best way in which we do this. Well, I guess we'll kind of go as we go here. All right. So any questions on what we decided up front before we go ahead and we get into things here?
I don't think so.
Okay. So I'm going to have you do most of the work here, but I will give some suggestions. And so where do you think we ought to start in tackling this problem?
Okay. First of all, creating something to like an input mechanism to get someone to provide their ID and authenticate their identity too. So like an ID and the password.
Okay, so setting up the main program loop and the part of it that lets them log in and access. So that's certainly one place to start. I mean, there isn't a wrong answer here. I was kind of going to think that maybe we should go look up some of the tools that we think we're going to need, so that we don't get too far down the rabbit hole without actually understanding how some of the basic things that we're going to do work. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to enforce some structure here. What I think would make sense is for us to figure out how do we do things with a CSV file completely properly, since we decided that's how we're going to be interacting with our application for the most part. So I don't know about you, but I don't really know how you, for example, make a new row in a CSV file in Python, or read information from a row, or things like that, right? So if that's going to be a very core part of our application, it kind of seems to me like we ought to figure out how to do that. And that's a good place to start, because once we have that, then it's just kind of building up everything else around that, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
let's take the fields here that we have for one of them, and then this part isn't really programming, so I can do this. Let's just make a couple example rows, right? So, you know, an ID is probably just going to be a numerical integer. So we'll start with, you know, normal integer, and this is comma separated values. So we will have, you know, files. Are you familiar with the CSV format?
You've shown me once, so
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, you have values in a file separated by commas. You know, they can, it depends on the format. For us, for readability, we'll probably separate things by spaces too. You technically don't have to. I'm trying to think of, well, you know, actually, I think we better not, because conventionally it's just commas. And so if we follow this order here, ID, name, password, cash on hand. So let's say that our wonderfully generic name here, we have Bob Jones, and then his password. Oh, what should his password be? I mean, it really doesn't matter that much here. Well, we'll see that he's very creative and that that's his password. Okay. And then finally, at the end here, how much cash does Mr. Bob Jones have on hand? Doesn't really matter, but for now, we'll say that he has $300. Okay. So this is what I mean by example data, right? Now, if you'll notice one thing that may seem a little strange, I put quotes around this. Now, right now, it's not very necessary, but if we had decided to store our names as like last name, comma, first name, well, this comma would start posing issues if we didn't put quotes around it, because we're separating values in this file with commas. However, you can see that what happens if you have a comma in a string. So that's just why I wanted to introduce that. But because we don't need it, I think we probably won't write it. So this will be the format. Okay, so we have Bob Jones. Let's come up with another. And now, conventionally in database systems, IDs will increment one at a time. However, it's important that we get through our heads that it doesn't really matter what the person's ID is. That's just how we're tracking them in our data system. That's why I'm jumping immediately from 3 to 7, and the order doesn't matter here. This is just the identifier that we're identifying people with. Because I'm so creative, we'll say that Mr. Charlie only has $150. Okay, so all right, so now what I think we can do is go through and figure out how do we first of all, how do we read one of these records? How do we update one of these records? And how do we add a record to this file? Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So the record, update a record, add a record. So I'm trying to come up with the best way to do this. Can you share your screen in the meeting? Because I could do this, but if you're doing research, you know, I kind of want to let you take the reins for this rather than, you know, me doing it.
Okay.
So
okay.
If I stop sharing here, can you share your screen?
Yeah. Okay. But I'm disabled, kind of. I can't share my screen.
One sec. More. Allow to. Huh. All right, well, I'll make you the host temporarily. See if you can do it now. Can you do it now?
Yes, that's what I'm doing.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Can you see me now? Yeah.
Yep, I can see you. So hopefully it's picking up on the recording okay too. So now the question will be, how about, I mean, like I said, I don't want to hold your hand too much here, but I think I've given you, a set of things to do here for our customer records. And so now the question is, how do we do these three things here with CSV files in Python?
Let me.
Okay, so I can give some pointers and stuff, but in general, I kind of want to let you see how we're doing here.
You want me to stop sharing that?
No. That's the whole reason, was that I'll be able to see what sites you're using and how you're going about the process here.
I don't have to use the import keyword, do I?
So do you see on the line under the open one says CSV reader equals CSV.reader and then something? Where is CSV
Yes,
defined?
yes.
You actually do have to import it. And in fact, this was one of the reasons why I wanted us to do this explicitly with a package, because we could just read it. We could just read it in as text. Remember, we did that before. Previously, we'd had another file that we had just read in line by line in text. And that was an example we'd done with loops. However, doing it with a CSV file like this will have some advantages, as we'll see. It handles all of the parsing of the things for us here.
Okay.
So how about we just try it?
Yeah, that's what I want to do. But this thing keeps pulling down, so I have to do that. Okay. All right. Just like this now, right?
Mm-hmm. So right now you are in the middle of a comment. So that's not going to work.
Yes, I'm aware.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just making sure. Yeah. In fact, I would recommend I would recommend you just copy paste the whole thing, and then only change the parts that you need to. That'll be a lot quicker than.
Okay.
Also, completely unrelated to programming, but do you have a mouse with you right now, or are you doing this all on a trackpad?
I'm doing it on a trackpad. I don't have a mouse.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, do you have a lot of experience with a mouse generally? Because generally, yeah, I think the consensus is I don't have one. But I think generally the consensus is using a standalone mouse. I actually don't use a mouse. I use a trackball. I can, at some point, I'll show you what it looks like. I have a thumb trackball. But using something other than a trackpad is likely to make you quicker in, copying and pasting things and clicking on things, just generally you're able to be faster if you don't use a trackpad, if you use something else. So just something to consider.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So what differences do you see between what they had here and what we have?
Okay, the name of the file is one difference.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's
Mm-hmm.
okay. I'm not really sure what to do with this little the first print line. Then okay.
Okay. So
from
if you go back and you look at the example that they have on the website, you want to go do that for a sec because I can explain it. If you go look at the first slide, scroll up a little and look at the first line in the file. And what does that first line in the file contain?
The categories, the things that contain a sort of.
Now, I don't exactly know the format of a CSV file, but if you don't know the structure, one advantage of actually storing that information in the file is that whoever accesses your file in the future will be able to say, oh, okay, so the thing before the first comma is a name, right? So now if you go back to the code, do you see what the first thing is doing now?
Yes, that's the idea, right?
Well, I mean, I meant like the code that they just had there. And let me give you another hint. You see how you have to scroll all the way back down now, and that's really annoying.
Yes.
Okay, so get to where we are. Now go ahead and right-click the example.csv file over in the file sidebar. Right-click it and say open in tab.
Right.
Now go back to the main file. Like you can just click between them.
Okay.
And you see how now you don't have to scroll. Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so that first thing says if line count equals 0, they're going to print a string. And what does the string say?
Column names are.
Now, would we want to print that for all the rows in the file? And I'm not talking about our file, I'm talking about their file.
It doesn't seem like that would make a lot of sense for them to do. I mean, just for, let me see if I'm tracking this right. Oh, I'm sorry, that was a mistake. Okay. It's just for the column name, so that should be once. They should print that just once, not for every.
And so, do you see the conditional they have there?
Yeah, if line count is 0, so the very first line.
So they're only going to do that the very first time, right?
Yes. Yes.
So, do we care about any of that? Do we have column headers or column names?
No, we don't.
Okay. So what I would recommend is you see on line 959 where we're entering this for loop.
Yes.
I would put your cursor after that line. So, and then just give it a couple enters so that we clear out the stuff below it. And then I would just comment that stuff out because their stuff it's a good example for us, but we're not really going to use that stuff directly. So if you highlight the whole section and then press control, like hold down the control key and then press KC. Yep. Okay. You've done that before. Okay. So now the question is, you see the second print statement they have? So to make it more readable, I don't like actually directly indexing like that. If we go look at our file, and remember to use the tabs up top so that it doesn't it doesn't scroll you. So if we go look at example.csv up there, remember how things are 0 indexed, right? So if the data for one of these is contained in a row variable, how do we get the ID, the name, the password, and the like, what should we call the cash on hand, perhaps?
Say that again.
Okay, so we know that where we are, if you go back and you look at the code where we are right now, we're inside of a for loop. Oh, well, there we go. You're inside of a for loop, and we have a variable called row. And if you look down at their example a little farther on down, you see how they're accessing things inside the row? So how can we grab that information that we just said? And I was going to recommend that here, I can actually still go here, I believe. So you should see my cursor. What I was going to get at is you should be able to do that, right? And then do you think you can do the rest after that?
Equals row, okay. Row. We're treating the row like it's a list.
Okay. In fact, my guess is it probably actually is. I'm guessing that the handy library that we imported here, the CSV library, when we call CSV reader, and then we give it a file, and then we give it a delimiter, is going to,
Sorry. Why it jumped back to the beginning. It's really slow for some reason. Okay.
Okay. Well, you know what we could do at some point is here, let me do something that should help in this specific case. So let's, for a moment here, collapse all of our code. So I'm going to make another file and call it example.py. Now you'll have issues running this because the online interface here is, I mean, I don't want to say dumb, but at some point I'll get you set up locally so you won't even have to be online to do all of this, which is of course the ideal. So let's get the stuff that we're interested in right now in the main file that is easy for us to run and stuff. And then all of the past examples will still be there, and you can just copy paste in anything you want to run. So now our file is only like 100 lines. That should make it easier, even if you have issues in the connection, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we have all of our information stored in variables. Let's say that we want to start here just by printing out all the customers, right? So right now we're in a loop, and if you scroll down a bit, so you see their example, you see how they have the second print. So how about you just copy that format, right? You don't have to copy that statement, but copy that format.
Okay.
So have you ever used a string in Python when you stick an F in front of it?
No, but
okay.
you have a few times here. You said to copy the format and not the
Yeah.
code. I'm not sure how to do that.
Well, what I meant was like, so you're going to use no, just Control C. I mean, like normal copy it. But what I meant was like you're going to use like the print, and then you're going to use the F string in the print, but you don't need to do like you don't care about their print message because we're going to build our own, right? So like you can delete everything between the open quotes is what I'm saying. Like print F open quote /T. It's going to add a tab, right? We don't care about that. So like I'm saying, so we have F and then the open quote all the way to the other open quote, delete everything in the middle.
Leave the tab, right?
I mean, you could. What we do when we have the tab is it means that when we print these out, they'll appear offset to the right a little bit in the console, which is fine. Okay. So now the format string that we're using here lets you use variable names directly to kind of insert them into strings, which is why it's very convenient. So how about here, let me start us again here. So we probably want to print out customer records. So for now, we'll just print everything out in the same order that we had in the database here, right? So this is all you have to do to access something in this sort of string is just put it in curly braces. And that should not be if, that should be ID.
So rather than doing row 0, I can just do ID like that.
And the reason why I had us start out doing ID, or why I had us make variable names for each of the things, was because you could skip this step. And where we have ID right now, you could just put row 0. However, if someone else comes and reads your code later, well, what they're going to ask is what the heck's row 0, right? And so doing it how we've done here, this is how I favor it. You see, it makes your code longer, right? You have 4 lines that quote unquote aren't doing anything. However, it makes your code much, much, much easier to understand. And that will be very important, as you'll see. Once the project gets a little bit bigger, you're going to have to come back and look at code that you've written a little while ago. And it's not going to be as fresh in your mind. And so you want to make sure that your code's as easy to understand as possible, because you're going to have to deal with it yourself too. Okay. So how about we just print out the rest of the information, and I'll leave it up to you. Figure out some way to put, a separator between things. I would recommend making it, more readable. So probably could just use commas again, but let's not. How about we use
use new lines?
Well, but we're going to be printing all of these out in a loop, right? So we do kind of want all of the customer information on a row. Now, something that I kind of like when I was doing my console applications in college was I oftentimes used bars like that, because nice big differentiators, so space bar space, and then name, and then password, and then cache, right?
But doesn't this need to be in quotes? Okay, maybe not.
Have we closed the string though?
Yeah, it's within a string. So, okay. Okay, this may.
Okay. So you want to try running the file and seeing what happens? So what do we expect to have happen here? About that, yeah. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does. It does.
Okay. So this is, let me ask this question. Is this something that we would want to actually display to a user here? Like if someone's using our application, do we want to be showing them the IDs in our applications database and other users' passwords?
No, we don't.
Probably not, right?
Yes.
Okay. So how could we change this code to just show, well, you know what? Yeah, how can we change this code to just show perhaps name and cache as the only things that we'd want to do when we list customers?
We change. I didn't hear you.
Okay. So I said, you understand why we don't probably want, if we let someone view all users, we don't really probably want to let them see other people's passwords, right? So what I was asking is, what's a simple change to the code we could make where we don't show them the database IDs and the passwords of the people here?
We could limit it to just the person who is viewing, who's using the app at the moment, and we could use a conditional. So if so,
but you see how right now we don't have this limited to a specific person now, do we? Right?
No, we don't. Yes.
Okay. So how about you modify this to make it a function? And let's do that. Let's make this for a single person.
Okay.
So you know how to make functions, right?
Code,
So
right?
wrap
Yes,
wrap all of this in a function and have the function take in a parameter called name.
Okay. Okay.
So by the way, what we've just written gets all the rows, right?
Yes.
Kind of what we're interested in for doing things in our data file here is going to be just getting a single row, right? And that's what we're going to change this to right now.
Yeah. I forget how you said to tab things.
Just highlight it and press tab.
Okay. All right. Yes. That's
Don't forget your colon. Outside the parentheses, yeah. Okay. So I would call it record singular because we're going to be modifying this to only print one, right? And then you see how we have the green squiggles under line count? If you want to hover over that with your mouse, it's going to say that that variable is never used because it was used by the code that we commented out that we had copied off the internet, but we don't actually need that line count, right?
Okay, so I can comment it out too, or delete
or you
it.
can just delete it. I mean, I think we've got the examples that we needed from the code that we copied, so we don't really need it anymore.
Okay. So am I right in thinking that I still need to write a conditional? I still need to write.
So if the goal of what we're trying to do is to only print out the information of the person who has the name equal to the name that we're passing into this function. Now, if you put the conditional there, what are you going to check it with?
So I will put it in here. So what's the problem right now? Row one. Let me just do this, then I'll know if I'm.
Okay. Yeah. You see the issue though.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Now the problem is that we use the same variable name in two different scopes,
okay.
right? So
Okay.
how about you modify the input to customer underscore name? Okay. And then it's probably better if instead of row 1 there, we use what?
We used 1.
No. I said instead of row 1 in the conditional check.
Yes.
What else could we use?
We could use name.
Yeah. Okay, good. So now I would delete everything past line 104. We don't need what's commented out anymore. Okay. And how about after delete that, you make a call to this method. So just outside of the function, this is just in the normal script scope, you make a call to access record. And let's try this for Charlie, who's the second person in our file. So
Right?
okay. Yep. So if we try running that, what would we expect to print out?
Just Charlie's information.
Charlie's information, right? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Makes sense.
So that was reading a record, right? That was one thing we decided we needed to do. What were the other things that we decided we wanted to do? Actually, I forgot one too. So let me go back.
We also want to update a record. We want to write and add a new record. Those are the.
And actually, number 4, we're also going to want to be able to delete a record. Okay. So commonly, these operations are referred to as CRUD operations, C-U-R-D. It's an acronym that stands for create, read, update, delete. Anytime you have data in systems, you're going to want to be able to create new records, read the records that you have, update the records that you have, and delete the records that you have. Very, very, very normal. So we're going to be doing all of that in our particular example here with our CSV file.
Okay.
So now we've done read this morning. How about now you go back and you research how to update a row in a CSV file, Python, or something like that, right?
I want to use another one. Sometimes this website is a bit weird for me.
Geeks for geeks. They tend not to like tone it down too much. So, well, that's the one that we were on. There's nothing wrong with that. We'll see if.
Yeah, but I don't know if they had anything on updating. I know they were talking about reading and writing. Let me see. Okay. This one is going to be.
I'm actually not sure it's as easy as I thought it might be. I'm looking right now too.
So let me just look at the next page because all of these ones are looking big. Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm gonna post a link here in chat, Audie.
Okay.
And this is how I think we ought to do it here. Not the most elegant, and as you'll see, this is typically why people use actual databases rather than CSV files, but okay, so here's our person. See if you can understand that code. So they're using the CSV module as we are, right? They're opening an input file and an output file, and then they're making a reader and a writer. And then if you look at the very last line in the code block, they're moving output file back to the initial file. So basically, they're going to go through in a loop, and then they're going to, I mean, this code doesn't work. That's why they're asking what's wrong with it. But if you scroll down to the answer here, then you'll see that
let me compare the two.
you don't have to understand this situation specifically. The idea here was going to be that we're going to open another file when we do this, and then we're going to write all the stuff to that file, like a temp file, and then we're going to copy, and then we're going to move the file to the initial one once we've closed both.
Okay. But I should copy the code, right?
Or
not necessarily.
I mean, not necessarily line for line, but do you understand conceptually what I just said? So
you have to open a new file.
Let me go to our shared file here. Okay, so we have one that called access record. For consistency, I'm going to call this read, just so that we access our functions according to kind of normal naming conventions. So we have one called read.
Okay.
And I'm actually going to change this code to take in an ID rather than a name, because that will be more customarily how we would interact with these data systems. Okay, so we have read. And then I can't spell. Now we're going to have another one called update record. Update record. All of these things are going to take in the ID here. Okay, so why doesn't it like this? Oh, right. Okay, so here I'm going to get us going because I don't want us to get stuck forever on this, but you see how sometimes it takes a little while to figure out how to kind of how to do operations here. Okay, so we're going to open here. Well, let's see exactly what ours looks like. So with open, all right, I'm going to be, I want to see if I can, just because I've never done this before, I'm not entirely sure exactly how the thing's going to work here. So we're going to open the bullet. This one's going to be example CSV. And then so I see what they're doing. That's kind of convenient here. So we're actually going to specify to the CSV reader the names of the fields that we're using. So for us, the order that we have is ID, name,
password, and cache.
Okay. So now we're specifying field names when we open these files too. And then we're going to go through the rows in the reader. So this is the file that we have. And then if I don't want to just write the whole thing, but I want to get it. So when they update something, they're going to have to tell us who they want to update for, what they want to update, and what the new value will be. So thus far, let me get the scaffolding in place, then I'll have you write the last bit of it.
So why aren't we using the indexes though? The 0, 1, 2, 3?
Because we're using the field names instead here. We opened the file with field names, so it makes it more readable, right?
Okay.
We'll refactor the above method in a sec. I mean, this is what I said about me not actually knowing this either. What did I not do right? Invalid syntax, huh? I probably missed something somewhere, but I'm not seeing it immediately. Is everything up to that line okay? That
Yes. Yeah, I think I get it.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not sure I understand this last line.
So we're almost out of time this morning. I'm going to have to go to work soon here. But
I have this question. What does this line mean?
so we're opening a wait, what line? You're highlighting
From open to writer.
So we're building a CSV reader application and a writer. Using the CSV package.
Okay. And then they're necessary to updating.
Oh, let me use this syntax here. a lot more readable to me. Ah, that's what it is. Knew I was missing something. Will let me do that.
Okay.
So. Okay, so like I said, I'm gonna have to run pretty soon here because I have work. But let me try running this first. Probably thinks we have to. I didn't do what we wanted. But we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out tomorrow.
I understand a bit of the code, but tomorrow I'll ask questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we did get the read record done though. So we'll keep going. This is the heavy lifting part of the application probably. And after that, I think everything else should be easier, right? Okay.
This is very new to me.
All right. Well, we will do more tomorrow then. Can you make me the host again here?
Sure.
Just right click me in participants and make host. See if I can figure out a way to make people who aren't the host share their screen too. I'm pretty sure there's a way. I'll just have to go dig into settings somewhere. Okay, so we'll stop the recording here and pick back up tomorrow.